everybody here? Okay. Well, first I want to thank the Center for the Humanities, the Office of Academic Affairs, and the CUNY MFA Creative Writing Affiliation Group, most especially my beloved colleague Kimiko Hahn and John Curry for introducing us all so nicely. And the other readers, it's been so fun sitting here listening to everyone, and I really agree with Jan. I think we're listening to a lot of first books tonight, if not second books and third books, and it's wonderful to hear everybody. So I'm going to read 4 poems to end the evening. 3 from my forthcoming book and 1 more recent. And as John said, my forthcoming book is about Hurricane Katrina. And a lot of it's about my family's experience during the hurricane and afterwards. So I'll start with a poem directly about that. This poem also invokes something I never knew about growing up in New Orleans as a child, the flood of 1927. Do you all know about this? Well, the Great Flood of 1927 essentially happened when men blew up the levees to stop the flooding of the Mississippi River and intentionally flooded poor African-American parts of Louisiana. And there's a wonderful book about it by John Barry called Rising Tide, but it's going to be referenced in this poem. September Notebook. Like the magic porridge that takes over the town, pours through the village, fills, then empties the streets. It swallows everything in September, and it happens twice. First, in New York, the burning seeped under our apartment door into the window seams. The sharp smell threaded through my daughter's hair for days. I pressed my lips to her head. 4 years later in New Orleans, water surges over, under, wrenches houses off foundations. The flood wall cracks, an explosion of gunfire. Water surges around my parents' house. I read that story to my daughter because once upon a time, there were 2 Septembers in 2 cities. The one of the towers on fire, the one of the floodwaters rising. Once upon a time, my mother read it to me while we leaned together in my canopy bed. When outside the window over the levee, the river was all flat green and quiet. Now someone else is reading me the story. I crawl up on her lap, but she pushes me off and says, "Don't shut your eyes just because you can't watch TV. The jumping couples from windows of Tower 1, the family's attic split open in the lower 9, waiting for rescue." Once upon a time, it was the end of August, and I was on the phone with my parents, begging them to leave the city. Fast forward to my parents' repeated answer, "This is our home." I was telling my parents to go to the Superdome. Today's American history lesson, the voice says. Once upon a time in 1927, white men blew up the Industrial Canal. With a loud crack, they breached the levees. They wanted to drive the black families out. So when my daughter's class gathers at the flagpole for a patriotic song in commemoration of the event, the sky is a pure blue bowl capable of holding nothing. Here is the weather, the voice says. New York's bright sky in both Septembers. Ever since, a clear early fall day is 9/11 weather. I sit beside my mother on my bed. I hold my daughter on my lap. When the peasants run and the porridge blankets the streets, who will save them? Today's history lesson. It swallows and swallows and swallows. I'd like to sit with her, Our Lady of the Breach, Our Lady of the Burning City, Our Lady of the Uncomforted. I'd like to hold her hands down and whisper the lesson. I'd like to force the floodwaters down her throat. Now, a slight change of pace, but still the same project. I don't know, how many of you have been to New Orleans? People, oh excellent. Has anyone been to Camellia Grill? You have. She's from New Orleans. Well, Camellia Grill is a restaurant on the streetcar line in uptown New Orleans, and it's very legendary. It's a big tourist attraction, actually. But it's also a place where a lot of teenagers go late at night, and it's always full. There's a line out the door, and you sit at the counter. Anyway, post-Katrina, Camellia Grill, like pretty much everything else in the city, closed. And on a visit to New Orleans, I guess it was a year after the storm, I was walking by Camellia Grill, and I saw an amazing sight, which is, here's this little white restaurant, and all over it are these yellow, pink, and blue Post-it notes stuck everywhere all over it. And somebody had put up a sign that said, "Write a love note to Camellia Grill," with no explanation. And all over it, people had done just that, and there really were probably 500 of them were up. So of course I stopped and didn't want to take them, right? So I started writing down what each Post-it note and what it said. I just thought it was one of the most moving, funny, ironic, sad, and amazing things I'd seen post-Katrina. So this poem, called Write a Love Note to Camellia Grill, which was the instruction, uses some of those Post-it notes, but you'll be able to tell what they are. Write a love note to Camellia Grill. Hundreds of Post-it notes stuck on the windows. Dear Camellia Grill, I can't bear the thought of you not being here. Dear streetcar, gone, that shuttered down the avenue. Dear neutral ground, effaced. Last meal at Camellia, 18 days pre-K. Potato, onion, and cheese omelet. Pecan waffle, chocolate freeze. Dear dead bleached grass. Dear leaf-choked gutters. Dear drainage pumps. Late night here drunk and loved it. Dear levee, dear rusted barge, dear rope swing, your milkshakes bring all the boys. So many of us grew up eating here. We need you to open to feel more normal. Dear empty grill, dear freeze machine, dear jar of marmalade, dear phone book split and open on a table. My parents dated here and I dated here. Dear chrome and glass, dear counter, sparkle linoleum. Dear girl I once was, smoking at that counter, writing boys' names on a napkin. New Orleans has lost Schwegmans, K&B, Mackenzie's. It can't take another New Orleans establishment to be gone forever. Dear wind that distills the empty city. I will come every day with 100 people. Dear damage. I had my first date here. We got married. Come home. Dear forgotten. I am going to stay hungry forever. Dear girl I once was. Dear lost city, dear girl now standing at the window reading, I'm pregnant, come back. It did reopen, by the way, and all of those Post-it notes are gone. I imagine what happened to them.